In March of 2016, 11 of my peers, along with myself, went to a small village in the Yunnan province of China called Xizhou for 28 days to experience life outside of our urban bubble of Shanghai. While in this village, each of us studied a specific topic of personal interest. The topic that I chose is the water used into treatment in Xizhou. I chose this topic because I lived in India for 1 year, and while I was there, I noticed that most of the people got their water from manual pumps that brought the water up from the ground before they could drink it, and I also noticed that this water was not clean. After I saw people doing that, I always wondered how they treated the water so that it could be used for cooking, cleaning, and drinking. When I saw that the water used into treatment in rural China or the village of Xizhou was one of the topics to choose, my choice was easy. While I was speaking to some locals about the water in the village, I realized that to understand the water in Xizhou, one must understand where the water comes from, how and where it is treated, and how it is used for daily life. While I was speaking to some of the locals in the village, three major places kept on coming up about where the water comes from. One of the places that the water begins, or is collected from, is Lake Erhai. It is then brought out of the Lake Erhai and then sent to the water purification plant. The second place that the water is collected from is small individual wells, much like the one at the Linden's Yangzhou Ran. While I visited Mr. Zhao, the Yangzhou Ran's bow and security guard, he showed me the well. When Mr. Taffel asked the first few questions to Mr. Zhao, he instantly told us about the well and offered to show us. I was able to first-hand experience how hard it really is to gather water from a well. You have to first maneuver the bucket so that it's upside down and then let it drop into the water. Mr. Zhao also spoke about how the location of the water has changed over time. But before the 1970s, everyone used Lake Erhai or wells to get the water. During the 1970s, the government began creating modern pipes and plumbing. He stated that it took a while for the people to adjust to the new ways of using water, but everyone eventually did. The third and final place that people gather water from are the mountains that are uphill or west of Xizhou. The water from the mountains is collected in small pools and then brought down to the village via pipelines. While we had our 5-hour hike, we walked along the few pipes and I was able to see how long the process really takes. After the water has been collected, it is sent to one of 2 water treatment plants in Xizhou. For the first time in my life, I was able to see how people purify the water so that people like me who live urban lives don't have to worry about drinking dirty water. The process was much longer than I ever expected it to be, and there were so many smaller stages that people overlook when they think about the topic. I sadly was not able to get into the drinking water treatment plant, but I was able to get into the agricultural water plant. The water is first collected in a small pool that only holds polluted water from Lake Erhai. There is a separate pool that collects rainwater, however, the people that work at the plant make sure the 2 types of water do not mix. Once it has been collected in these pools, it is sent into a much larger pool, which is used for killing the bacteria in the water. I was able to see where they add the medicine, as Mr. Jake told me because he didn't know the correct translation, into the water. The workers call this room the laboratory. The room has large tanks that hold the water that is being treated. After the bacteria has been cleaned out from the water, it is sent into a series of machines that take the larger pollution such as paper and plastic and leaves out of the water. Once I took one look at the larger waste machines, I realized how much we actually disrespect the water in our world. There were about 6 of these large machines that took out the waste that we put into our water. As the polluted water goes through this process, the rainwater is collected and sits in several pools until it is then purified. However, when the rainwater is purified, it is only purified for bacteria, not for larger waste. The process comes to an end in 2 large pools that are separated by a barrier. One pool holds the water that was purified for pollution, and the other holds the rainwater that has been purified. The water is then distributed to the farmlands that are in Xizhou or near Xizhou via pipelines. It is also sent directly to the garlic field that is just across the street from the plant. I continued making connections with the locals and asked them questions about the water. I was able to learn a fairly large amount of information about how they use the water for their daily lives. One of the best experiences I've had here in the village was being able to talk to the locals without the feeling of a gap or the awkwardness being there. Most of the locals that I spoke to talked about the daily uses for their water, such as cooking, cleaning, bathing, etc. Most of them also said that they got their water from the mountain rather than Lake Erhai. They also stated that when they were my age, they all got water from wells similar to the one that Mr. Zhao has shown me. As I was speaking to Miss Lee, a farmer near the Lin Center, she stated that the water from the fields comes directly from the water plant that I just spoke about. There is no specific time during the year, such as winter, summer, spring, or fall, she said, when we get the water, but if they ask them to, they give it to us. In my personal experience, the water is usually running for the irrigation system in the afternoon between 12 and 2. Similar to the water back in Shanghai, after it is used for its purposes, it either goes back to the water plant or back into Lake Orha so that the process can repeat itself. This village has one of the best experiences I'll ever have in my life. I was able to learn not only about the water here, but about myself. I was also able to grow in many ways, including my positive impact on the places that I go and the people who live there, as well as keeping my water usage and pollution in check. My inquiry project, as well as the entire Microcampus experience, allowed me to discover things about myself that I never would have if I didn't go on this trip. The main takeaway from this trip that I was able to get was to understand the water in Xizhou or anywhere else in the world. You have to understand where the water comes from, how it is treated, and how it is used for daily life. The Microcampus experience is one that I would recommend to anyone who is interested in going on the trip. There will be a lot of hard work and some stressful times, but overall the experience is definitely worth the hard work. I will be leaving Xizhou in less than a week, and I cannot imagine my life without going on this trip. I was able to learn so much about the waterworks here, but more importantly, I was able to learn a lot about myself.